It's very easy to praise the OnePlus 5T. The idea of a phone that ticks all of the boxes at a lower price is one that attracts attention and draws loyalty. But is there a little bit more to it? I've been using the 5T since a week before its launch. This is my real review. Something I would say is considerably overlooked when it comes to this phone is it misses out on what I would call flair. Whether it's the 120Hz display of the Razr, the S Pen of the Note, the software trickery of the Google Pixel, the OnePlus doesn't really have any of that. Yes, it's true, the OnePlus stands toe-to-toe with most phones in terms of its core competencies. But in most cases, these more expensive smartphones do also offer more stuff on top of this. Now, these extra features don't necessarily show up on a spec sheet. For example, the motor mods you see on the Motorola Z2 Force, these stereo speakers you see on the Pixel 2 XL. So in that sense, it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking the 5T is doing everything the same but just cheaper. That's not exactly the full picture. One thing the 5T does bring to the table is face scanning. It's slightly overhyped. I mean, it's not as fast or as secure as a fingerprint scanner here, which is pretty fantastic. And don't get me wrong, face scanning is a welcome option, but it's not what I'd call a unique selling point. We'll come back to this idea in a few minutes, and we need not forget that there is a lot of really good things about this device. But a more interesting angle to take for this review is for us to start with its shortcomings, or at least what people have said against the 5T. Android 7.1, the software version this phone was released on, even some time after Android Oreo has gone public, and it caused reviewers especially a little bit of a worry around launch time because there was no official word on an Oreo release date. However, as of January 2018, we've already hit beta number 2 for the official Oreo ROM, so we're going to be seeing this in 1 to 2 months' time maximum, which is only slightly longer than what we're expecting to wait for the Galaxy Note 8. The OnePlus 5T doesn't support SD cards like OnePlus's previous devices, but this can almost be ignored. The top-tier, fully upgraded 5T is still way cheaper than the competition, and with 128GB of storage, of which over 110 gigs is usable, you pretty much shouldn't have to worry about running out of space. The lack of water resistance has also been criticized, and to some extent I agree. It's a bit of a shame this phone doesn't even have IP67 certification, but this is a non-issue. I can't think of a single person who bathes with their smartphone, and for the odd instance you might drop your phone in water, this guy's gonna survive it anyway. I don't endorse dunking it for the sake of it, but at the same time this has enough resistance. The last stab that people have really taken at this phone is that wireless charging is absent too, which a spokesperson has said is due to incompatibilities with dash charging. Now, the thing with wireless charging is, you either use it or you don't. If you use it, it's highly important to you, and to be honest, you should start looking for a different phone now. But if you don't, it bears absolutely zero weight to your buying decision. So if you're perfectly happy using a cable and that's what you're used to, then this aspect too, just like the water resistance, the lack of SD cards, and the older version of Android, can be overlooked. Alright, the camera on the OnePlus 5T is a bit of a hot topic. With the OnePlus 5, whereas the camera was originally understood to have 2x optical zoom, it turns out it used a combination of optical and digital, and so wasn't quite lossless. Unfortunately, the OnePlus 5T is even worse. It uses purely digital zoom. There is no telephoto lens here, so it now suffers even more when it comes to zooming in. It still does fare better than the Pixel 2 XL in this aspect, but it's really not great. Side by side, where both the OnePlus 5 and the 5T were zoomed in 5.6 times, the image was much clearer on the 5. The Pixel 2 on the other hand has zero capacity for lossless zooming, and at the same magnification, the image very quickly becomes soft. Portrait mode though now is way better on the 5T, and bonus points for not needing to zoom in like the iPhone and the Note 8, but the edge detection on this phone is still not quite up there with those. So as we've seen, the 5T does have a couple of pros over the competition. Unfortunately, in every other aspect, the camera lags behind the Pixel, the Note 8 and the iPhone X. In low light, even with this new sensor the phone has, photos get pretty grainy pretty quickly. In HDR scenarios, it can sometimes blow out highlights, and despite having a higher megapixel count than some of the other smartphones, sometimes and oftentimes detail is lower. Some reviewers have criticized the 5T for not having dual front-firing speakers, which I would say seems a little bit on the harsh side. In a stage where only 50% of the flagship phones have any sort of multi-speaker setup, it would seem kind of fair that in trying to cut price, speakers would be a good place to start. But if the question is, are we getting the exact same experience as more expensive phones, the answer is not quite. Most $700 plus phones, even with single speakers, including the Galaxy S8, actually sound better than the 5T. So this is another one of those things where, considering the price, it's fine, it's decent, it works. But that's not the same as saying it is like for like as good as the pricier phones. And a similar story holds true for display. The AMOLED technology allows for deep contrast and vivid tones, but resolution-wise, it's very mid-range. You can quite easily buy a phone at $150 that has the same resolution as the 5T. But you could look at this the other way and see it as smart cost saving in an area that people wouldn't really be able to tell. Because even though this is a large 6-inch display with a fairly mediocre resolution, it still looks good. Whether you're flicking through the UI, browsing the internet, enjoying pictures and videos, this display really enriches the experience. It is nearly edge to edge and is a very immersive screen to enjoy content on. But just bear in mind in the back of your head there is a sacrifice. It's not a huge one, but this is not a 2K screen and in some aspects you can tell. Alright, what we've said so far might be painting a bit of a negative image of this phone. But in terms of battery life, this phone has absolutely killed it. Alongside the original OnePlus 5, it beats most others in terms of charging speed and battery life. Not a world apart, but enough to be able to cement its lead. When it comes to performance, it doesn't even matter what price bracket we are talking about. The 5T is top dog. The combination of an overclocked Snapdragon 835, the most RAM you can get in a smartphone, and a bloat-free user interface means it just flies. It doesn't really matter what you do, it could be graphics, gaming, benchmarks, this phone tears through all of it. Whether it's app loading times, app closing times, multitasking, it wins all of them. Here's the thing though, any comparison we're going to make to the OnePlus 5 is going to make this phone look great. But this isn't the only comparison that needs to be made, as the OnePlus 5 is ultimately flawed in of itself. The 5T does everything you need to do on your phone, and very well. And after using it for a period of time, you start to forget about what it is missing. It's only when you, again, draw parallels with other phones that you're reminded of the poor speaker, the lower resolution display, the lack of wireless charging, expandable storage, S Pen, and the list goes on. But then you've got to ask yourself, one by one, am I happy to make these omissions for this drastically reduced price? And I reckon 90% of people would say yes. You throw in the miracle that is dash charging, you throw in extreme performance and fast face unlocking, and the 5T easily makes one of the top value smartphones in 2017. More powerful phones are coming very soon, but are likely to be twice as expensive, so as a prospect, the 5T is every bit as valid as it was on launch day. So as a bit of an overarching conclusion, I would say this. When you go and buy the OnePlus 5T, it's not like you are going to get what every other flagship phone offers, but for just over half the price. What you are getting though is a flagship experience at the very core, but one in which sensible exclusions have been made all the way around, which ultimately make this a slightly less capable phone than a lot of the other ones it's up against, but one that ultimately ends up being much better value. Thanks a lot for watching guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to smash that subscribe button down below. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's Boss, and I'm signing out.